Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Murugesh Mayandi. I'm the Chief Data Solutions Officer at Straive. Happy to host you all for a Data Solutions webinar from Straive. We're going to talk about unstructured data and why it's a big opportunity, what are some of the challenges, and how we see some practices in solving for it. Let me start with introducing the panelists along with me here. John Blanchard, Director of Global Production Services at ACS. ACS is a leading source for authoritative scientific information. John leads all STM publishing production services, right from document conversion all the way up to final article composition. And currently he's focusing on some of the transformation and modernization goals for data operations at ACS. Thanks, John, for joining us as a panelist. And I also have Jishnu Gupta and Priya. Jishnu is our Chief Technology Officer at Straive, focusing on all technology programs and platforms. Priya Ravikumar is a director within the Technology Solutions team, an architect at heart, builds, creates platforms and solutions for unstructured data needs. Quick housekeeping notes before we get into the webinar. This is a listen-only webinar, so if there are any questions or any challenges, please use the Q&A function to raise your questions or queries. If there are any technical difficulties, we have a team that's readily available to help you as well. We've planned for two polls specifically. Would appreciate your participation in those, and we'll get them as we get through the webinar. The materials will be shared, the video as well as the presentation following the webinar. And if there are any queries post the webinar, please contact Straive team at straive.com. All right, I thought I'll quickly start off with a quick overview about Straive. Some of you will know about Straive. For those of you who are new, we are a technology-driven content operations and data solutions company, 40-year-old, headquartered out of Singapore. And we focus on three things: research content solutions, where we partner with STM clients in creating content and delivering solutions; EdTech, where we partner with educational institutions and EdTech clients in creating educational content and delivering platforms. And the third one, which I lead, is data solutions, where we focus on text public data and visual intelligence. Text intelligence focuses on where we extract text and enrich them from any text-heavy document or source. Public data, where we help organizations create a differentiation by tapping into public data sources and creating intelligence from them. And the third one, visual intelligence, where we are creating new data sets out of any sort of media, whether it's an image or audio, video, and GIS data. Quick poll, Ritesh, if you'll bring up the question, please. Just to understand your background, as well as to get a picture of what your interests are, if you'll choose what best describes your organization's domain, what's your focus? We'll give a minute to look at the answers. And there is also a fun fact to this, which you'll see as we get into the next slide. Hopefully it's fun. We should have a Jeopardy music. Okay, Ritesh, let us know whenever you're ready to give us the answers. All right, great to see information providers at the top, which is good to see our focus areas, and there's a good number of others. I am extremely excited to see the data company to be 18% of the participants, and that's the fun part. While there's so many varieties, I think every company today is a data company. And you've got to be a data company to understand your domain, your clients, your needs, and be able to tap into what your company wants to do. And the webinar will cover in 3 parts. I will talk about an industry perspective of data and unstructured data. John will talk about his experience from ACS perspective, how he is solving for things. And then Jishnu and Priya will talk about one of the approaches, especially from a platform perspective, how we are solving for things. So every company today is a data company, and I wanted to take some examples to talk about very simple but key examples. If you look at banking and focus on unstructured data, that's the topic. While everybody talks about data, I wanted to focus on unstructured data. Banking, if you look at it, reducing risk, and especially looking at whether it is income data or ID proofs, and banks being able to not just ingest, let's say, for example, a license ID, but being able to monitor the expiration date of a ID proof and being able to alert the clients on when they need to resubmit, so that banks are able to better manage risk and fraud and an efficient operations. It's a good, simple use case from an unstructured data connecting with rest of the data in a banking world. If you look at oil and gas, with the environmental impacts and the pressure on oil and gas industry to look at any environmental impact that they bring in, leveraging GIS data and being able to monitor impacts real time so that they are able to act on it without causing any big damage is a good example of how oil and gas organizations are now dependent on data that's outside their walls to create intelligence. Education industry has just gone through a significant change with this pandemic, where they moved from grades and completion rates and dependent on data that they produce to getting better engagement from students with leveraging discussion posts, content created by students, and being able to look at engaged clients, engaged students, and creating personalized content for them. And lastly, from a health and science perspective, when we look at adverse drug reaction through pharmacovigilance and being able to create data from public inputs and public data is a key example from a health and science perspective. And so what we see in general is organizations that are trying to differentiate and trying to win are leveraging unstructured data, and the need for unstructured data is growing at a significant pace. And some of the trends and things that I thought will be important to keep in mind and to consider are unstructured data is growing with how consumers are interacting with both organizations as well as with other entities, and tapping it is very critical, yet very few organizations are tapping this to the fullest extent. The second one is, while there's been significant investments in data, I think it's moving away from storing more and more data to how can we get to the right data, actionable data, and differentiating data. I just don't want the same data that everybody has. I want something different, something new, so that we are able to create that differentiation with our clients. And the third one is AI has created a big change, and everything is being looked at from how can we apply AI perspective. But what we believe in is AI should be simple and should be experimented. And and should be purpose fit, right? It should be built for the purpose. So taking an approach of what can we use for AI and how can we customize it is very critical. And the last one, which has always been the case, as business value is still the king, and building with the why in mind is the critical aspect from data programs perspective. We spoke about unstructured data, but is it easy to solve for that need? Not really. And there are tons of problems, but I wanted to highlight these 4 problems that we see everywhere. The first one is organizations that have invested in structured data pipelines and now trying to tap into unstructured data, having challenges in leveraging these pipelines for their new data needs. And some organizations combine this with manual operations to say, I can acquire data manually and then channel it through the structured data pipelines, but it is still not efficient, still not scalable. So those are 2 big challenges that we see. The third one, variability in source and data quality is a very true nature of unstructured data. A good example that comes to my mind is when we were solving for a mortgage data problem, 20 years worth of data. Data comes in from facts, images, PDFs, and any sort of digital source now. And the quality changes as we look across this 20 years, right? From how the fax image looks to how a digital PDF looks today. And so building pipelines, supply chains that can cater to all these variability and data quality needs is a bigger challenge and needs to be kept in mind while we are building solutions. And the last one is lack of common data standards. And this comes in when we are trying to tap into unstructured data from different geographies, different sources, and especially solving for new problems. ESG is a good example where there are no common standards that are defined. It is up to the organization to define the taxonomy and the interpretations of the data points. And so how do you still build data operations in a way that it can scale, it can be successful, is very critical. And so what I see as 5 points that are required, and it differs based on where your organization is in terms of maturity, if you're starting a new set of processes or trying to expand your existing processes to newer use cases. But always start with defining your data objectives. Why is it required? What are the data points? What is the source? What is the quality? And how are we going to measure the value of this data on our business processes? That's critical. The second one, especially if you have existing supply chains, is to assess, will the supply chain be able to expand to newer use cases, and how can we customize some of the existing investments to fit to the newer needs as well. The third one is the most critical one, especially if you're starting afresh. You have an opportunity to not just solve for one use case, but build a flexible ecosystem of platforms that can solve for multiple use cases and can extend itself naturally to solve for multiple use cases. If you're starting afresh, spend a lot of time here. If you are expanding your systems, think about how you can build a flexible ecosystem, at least for your future use cases. The fourth one, especially in unstructured data operations, there's a lot of rule-based systems and rules-based applications that are still in place, that are still required. I'm not discounting them, but there are new age solutions with any form of AI, whether it is NLP, ML, automation, RPA, whatever it fits your need, please bring them into your ecosystem and build a scalable solution. And the last one, aim small, miss small, start small, iteratively, experiment, continue to expand, connect back with your data objectives, bring value to your business processes, measure the success, and continue to expand. Those are some of the things that we practice and we've seen to bring value. And I'll invite John to talk about his experience at ACS. What are the challenges? What has he used as his levers, and what are the results that he's seeing? John, over to you.
Thanks for inviting me to be a panelist. I appreciate the opportunity. So these are some of our business challenges and opportunities as we encounter them managing the variability of unstructured content, presents challenges. We receive primarily Word files as manuscripts, small number of LaTeX, and lots of supporting information in a variety of formats. The content is inspected for integrity and completeness, which is currently time-consuming and very costly. And subsequent data processing is purpose or process-specific, not a holistic approach. Our content has changed over time. Backfile goes back 25 years, has many iterations of XML and DTDs as they've developed over time for unique purposes. This presents challenges for our subscribers to our content and for support of internal product development as we address market challenges. Growth requires scalability. So onboarding acquisitions and partners is always a challenge due to the work necessary to have their backfile converted, as well as new content conform to our standards. We've heavily invested in internal standardization on composition and presentation formats over years that need to continue to be leveraged. We are part of an ecosystem. There are evolving business models. Content fulfillment and auto deposits are becoming a very large part of our business. So we're not just publishers, but we are federating content to various consortia, funders, and so forth. And they require deposits of content and metadata via various standards and protocols that are emerging and evolving, but are constantly different and new. We're often changing the tires while driving. This is obviously very familiar to most of us. A tendency to react to opportunities instead of strategically planning, stepping out of the current challenges and looking at a more long-term view of where we should be positioning. And these are not scalable solutions, just one-off responses, to market trends. So we're very much focused on scalable solutions moving forward. So thank you. What are our business approaches? Pushing and promoting data standards. So pushing standards and conversion processes as far upstream as possible in order to automate downstream processes. This is a new and emerging model that we're spending considerable amount of time and funding on. This could be required independent processes, calls to APIs and systems to transform content and data when needed. So if we have a workflow that we can branch off and engage API services or content transform services that are fit for purpose or fit for need, but don't interrupt our baseline process is important. We have opportunities to leverage data in emerging business models. This is daily presents challenges to us. How do we leverage automation? Process is semi-automated now, highly variable, but new technologies can help solve for this. So that's where we are investing. Cost value equations need to be there though. Cost for current services, for instance, versus investments to automate and refine. Commodity-like services are prevalent, but they're not always appropriate for the types of workflows and opportunities that we want to pursue. Opportunities to use core conversion engines, reading, interpreting our content for use in many different use cases. This is something that we struck upon recently, where we believe that building a central conversion engine based on AI technologies that can interpret our content will be a core to being able to explore any number of uses in workflows and product development opportunities and so forth. The constant monitoring of quality. For us, quality is always paramount and tops all of our lists. So we have very rigorous quality management programs based on final product development. However, now we are planning to move quality evaluations at key points in our process, not just validations, but actually content interpretations, which is an important concept. So putting automated quality assessment at the front of our process allows early remediation, reduction in costs, and in cycle times. There are process-specific automation opportunities. Black box solutions become possible. Data in and out based on specific requirements. Monitored but not performed by humans. Fulfillment can be automated and monitored instead of pay-as-you-go situations. And we are building structure transforms. So goal will be to configure systems easily and to build a library of transforms that can be leveraged in new business development and to promote standardizations, not only internally, but also in the marketplace. Next slide, please. So how are we solving for our challenges? Leveraging emerging technologies, for embracing AI and ML and other emerging technologies that read the content and replace the human intervention, as I mentioned, with automated process in language assessment, language polishing, copy editing, and quality scoring. This is something that we are heavily funding at the moment. Flexible ecosystems, we have the ability to consider parallel processes where current sequential ones have deep dependencies. Process-specific automation opportunities, calls to automated XML conversion services will allow us to break down workflow silos, editorial from production, from sales operations, and so forth. So gaining a high degree of internal efficiencies by marrying correlated processes together and looking at our workflow holistically end to end. Creating adaptations for specific purposes, rapidly allowing us to respond to market demands. The market is changing constantly, and we want to get in front of it. We want to be in a position to be able to respond immediately to the needs, as opposed to incubating opportunities and then responding with extended timelines. This is obviously a competitive advantage. Data quality remains paramount. So data quality will actually improve as overall dependency on data management are no longer application specific, but more prevalent. So we believe that we can improve quality of our content with minimal incremental investment, but through leveraging the types of tools and capabilities that are being available on the marketplace now. Cost to achieve higher quality will be reduced both internally and with our partners, of course. Governance is evolving. So governance of process can become commoditized. We are heavily labor intense now, as many organizations are, in overseeing and performing manual tasks and interventions in automation and so on to ensure pipelines of data processing are complete and correct and fulfill the required outcomes. But we believe that we will be able to step back from that and have people overseeing process. But that's a commoditized service. Now we can do it, or our vendor partners can do it 24/7 around the globe. But overall, it becomes much easier to manage and oversee scaling of processes. So taking the humans out of it and orienting them to oversee and manage, and then scalability is no longer daunting. We can manage scale at greatly reduced costs. And these are our current perspectives.
Awesome.
Hope that was helpful.
John, very helpful. Thank you. And I really like two aspects of pushing data standards upfront as far as possible and embedding data quality. Both are good practices, I'll say, from a data governance and management perspective. A quick poll again from what John spoke about, and we wanted to hear a little bit about your problems and challenges. So we kept it to what John spoke about in terms of managing source variability, delivering consistent quality, scaling up to new demands, integrating with other processes, or delivering faster. Wanted to get a quick view of what is your priority or challenges that you see. If you can take a minute to vote, that'll be helpful. And we'll hear from Jishnu next in terms of how he sees an approach that we take might help. Ritesh, whenever you're ready for the answers. Awesome. So the biggest one is, of course, source variability. Looks like it's a natural answer. And scaling up to new demands is the second one. Integrating with other processes. So Jishnu, if you'll talk about how do you think organizations need to manage source variability, and what is the platform approach that we've taken to manage some of these things, will be helpful. Over to you, Jishnu.
Sure, Murugesh. Thanks for that. If we just go to the next slide, I can throw through. So yeah, so this is our end-to-end data platform, Straive Data Platform, and this is a completely proprietary built platform. And what we see here is really going from extraction to delivery, right, into one ecosystem. And I'll kind of walk through each of these modules and in a little bit of a depth. So the extraction module essentially is really the content acquisition side of things, and we can think them to be connectors that can connect into various data sources. And we just now saw in the poll data, a variety of data sources, and here is exactly what we solve for. Is we acquire data, whether it be from PDF content or from public websites. There could be RSS feeds as well, or images or XML feeds. The first step we do is we really ingest that data through data connectors. Once we bring that data into our platform, we run enrichment modules, and this is really dependent on client needs, which is to be able to extract the entities or the relevant metadata that is required for the client, right? We also drive some of the other enrichment, which is to be able to populate a taxonomy or to be able to summarize the content or aggregate the data content. Often we see that in news data, and where we have to summarize that news content, or longer data form in the legal domain, where we have to create summaries of that data, right? The next module post the enrichment comes the transformation module, which is really about now we have processed multiple data sources. We now bring into one semi-structured data form, right, across the variety of data sources. And the transformation module is really about normalizing the data, removing all the duplicates, disambiguating the data, and creating the most relevant data structure that is required for the client. And this then gets on from the data pipeline, gets into our, the platform has a user interface, gets into the user interface where the SMEs can validate that data, quality check that data before the delivery to the client. And we also support dashboard reporting and analytics on the platform. So this is a fully cloud-enabled platform built in a very microservice-based architecture. That is, every component is completely decoupled and can be seamlessly integrated. And we saw one of the polls as well to be scaling on demand, and that's why we have thought about the design to be very decoupled, so that as the client need evolves, we are able to quickly configure and stand up the platform based on the client need, right? And scale it up. And
There is
also,
Jishnu, there's a question. How do you create taxonomies? And do we have subject matter experts? If you can touch upon that as well, please.
Sure. Yes. So we have a part of the platform has a UI to be able to create the taxonomy. But the more relevant part is exactly that we have subject matters experts in the scientific domain, in the paralegal, legal domain, or in the financial services domain that are actually a completely dedicated team with subject matter expertise who are there to create the taxonomies, right? And they work on the platform to create the taxonomy. What also often happens is that the taxonomy is given by the client. So, and you'll have a base taxonomy, which is given by the client. But what we are able to do is a recommender engine to be able to propose what are new taxonomy branches or stems that need to be created, right? And that's validated by the SME to be able to propose back to the client. Hope that answers
Yep.
that question. And yeah, and just lastly, just to before we move on, is that the platform is really also enabled to be able to support variety of business segments. It could be ESG data, it could be real estate, it could be scientific content, and it's really built. That's why the support for the architecture, so that it can support various business segments. If you want to move on to the next slide, and yeah. So what we'll do is we'll demonstrate the platform and give a little bit of site overview of the platform and how it works, but through one use case. And I'll take this use case as a very interesting use case, because it's quite relevant in the market now. We are starting to hear a lot around ESG data, and it's a new growing segment in the market, right? It's one of the fastest growing segment, both from a regulatory perspective, but also from a asset management perspective, ratings perspective, that is information provider and rating perspective, right? And there are over 10,000 companies that are getting monitored on a day-to-day basis, right? And what we talked about this as well. What it really drives this segment, which is very interesting, is that the highly unstructured data world that it requires. So before we really get into the ESG modeling done by financial institutes, the data collection itself is an onerous process due to the complexity of the data, both from an annual report, CSR data, multiple languages, brings in all the complexity, website data, news data, brings in really the complexity of the data world. Plus, there is a lot of overlapping data. About 40% of the data overlaps. So a siloed approach on just working by data stream does not suffice, because the data quality and the governance of the data then is a very siloed approach, right? And that doesn't solve for the problem. And because the segment is quite a growing new segment, still a lot of the processes are manual in terms of validating the data quality, setting up the governance, and also curating the data, right? And we'll show here a little bit, Priya will walk us through a demo to show how we have solved for this problem through a use case. So Priya, I'll hand it over to you. Thanks, Priya. So I'll just summarize here, and then we can open up for any Q&A. And really across this webinar, what we saw is the unstructured data is really exponentially growing across multiple business segments, right? And this is really critical to drive your business value. It's a very critical component of your business value chain. Also, the second point is that the organizations are now required to understand their data sources, their data complexity, and to be able to really prioritize their data challenges, right? Because there are multiple ones, and pick which are the top priority one, as well as also identify the optimal means for speed and efficiency. And finally, really a well-defined process and platform will enable to have an end-to-end delivery solution. So that's the summary. I'll open up for Q&A. And Murugesh, you want to take over?
Sure. Amit.
Thanks, Murugesh. So we have a few questions from the attendees. We have a couple of questions for John. Starting with John, we have one question is, what has been ACS's experience been encouraging authors to use the platform for content authoring? Would you expect to see a difference between journal and book authors?
Well, so I guess the scenario would be that in as least intrusive way, we would provide templates to authors to provide as content, some type of a structured template behind Google Docs or a Word interface or something like that. Benefits to us as we gain structure early. Benefits to authors is that assurance that the content is structured correctly and can be expedited to publish, for instance. So yes, I'm a huge proponent of that. The question is, can we get authors to adopt those solutions? Some can, some will, some will not. But I believe moving in that direction is of value. And I think that the more that type of capability is prevalent, that I think that, it'll be benefit the whole industry. Books versus journals. I don't think I see a difference there, quite honestly. I think I'm agnostic in terms of the content types themselves, depending upon the complexities of the presentation of the content at end state. So no, I'm happy to support, and yes, please, I'll take one. Thank you.
Thanks, John. So there's one more question for you. Do you subscribe to any third-party data sets, right? And if yes, how do you manage the integration with your systems?
Oh, I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? Third party
Do you subscribe to any third-party data sets?
data sets? No, we
Yeah.
do not. No, we do
Okay.
not.
All right. Thanks, John. So we have a few other questions for the Straive team. Starting with the first question is, so Murugesh, how much time do you think it takes to onboard a use case to the platform?
I'll say on an average, we typically start with a proof of concept. Again, going back to my point about start small, even before we onboard a full use case, what I recommend is let's try with a smaller sample or a proof of concept. And that typically I'll peg at maybe 4 to 5 weeks to really test the data, prove the value. And you want to look at it from the data value perspective, coverage, quality, turnaround time, aspects of it, validate that first, and then create a plan for onboarding the entire use case. So I'll take an approach of POC and then going live with the real production. 4 to 6 weeks for the POC at least.
Thanks, Murugesh. So second question is on a is on the machine learning side, right? So how does the platform tackle the requirement for large amounts of training data sets that are required for the machine learning models to learn?
Jishnu, maybe this will be better for you.
Sure. Yeah. So there are two aspects. Over the years, we have a number of pre-built machine learning models that are, existing, both from entity extraction, summarization, and other ones. We have also business specific. Models that are there. The crucial part of the platform is that when the SME works, the data pipeline enables that the model gets trained. And as you have seen on the demo, these the data gets annotated. Those labels and annotation are actually stored and are created as part of the data pipeline to be able to drive the very specific ML model build up, so that those use cases can be solved in a high automation, whether it be ESG data or legal data. Hope that answers.
Thanks, Jishnu. So the next question, I think we'll stay with Jishnu, is from the infrastructure perspective. Does the platform need to be on the Straive environment, or it can also be on our environment or the client's environment in this case?
Yeah. So thanks, Amit. So we support both models, and in fact, we have seen clients having a variety of needs. So one is it can be on our Straive's cloud instance, on AWS cloud on Straive's instance. We have also requests from clients to be hosted on premise or on their cloud instance as well. So we support all of these use cases.
Thanks, Jishnu. And so Murugesh, over to you for the final question, which is so from your experience, what's the typical level of automation we can expect in a typical unstructured data use case if we're starting from scratch, from a completely manual operation?
Again, it depends on the source and your goals from quality perspective and completeness perspective. We got to look at all aspects of the data quality there. But if I have to give a high level answer, if the source is text heavy and we are able to see at least close to 80-85% automated curation and still advise a human curation on top of it to get to the quality levels that you're looking for, right? But if the quality of the source itself is different, and let's say it also has some handwritten text, then the quality or the automation levels are going to change. What we are continuing to do is it's not that one size fits all. You will have to look at a mix of technology capabilities and automation capabilities to look for your goal in the automation levels and how can you get most accurate data. And it is also a journey. It's not about what you do either during the proof of concept or as you go into production. The goal has to be how to continuously improve your automation levels, be able to reduce the human interventions that are required and continue to monitor them. I know it's a broader answer, but that's the most pragmatic approach that I will recommend.
Thanks, Murugesh. So I think, yeah, so those were the questions. And if you've not been able to answer some of the questions, we'll reach out to you one-on-one and make sure we'll answer your questions as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Amit, for coordinating that. That brings us to the end of the webinar. I sincerely thank John for his time in joining us today again. And all the participants, I hope this was helpful and a little bit knowledgeable. Thank you. Have a great day.